Many people across Southwest Florida are not resting easy post-Irma, among them the living and in some cases the dead. The hurricane flooded several area graveyards, unearthing caskets at the historic Buckingham Cemetery, final resting place for about a dozen Civil War veterans. Our news press team covered this grave situation.
It looks like my Aunt Dot and my Uncle David have moved. Their caskets have moved. So I don't know exactly how we're going to put that back together. And there's not a whole lot of family members left that can help with that. So I just wanted to come and check to see how theirs did. And it looks like they've moved. I would like to see these get put back. I mean, it's not a priority when you look at the people that are still living with no air, no water, and no electric, and they're living where water's sitting. So this isn't a major priority, but when everything's calmed down, it would be nice to move everyone back.
Amy Bennett-Williams and Ken Fay brought us this story from the news press. Amy, can you talk about the historical nature this particular cemetery holds?
This cemetery in Buckingham, which is a little community in unincorporated East Lee County, is very close to the Orange River. It's where many of the region's pioneer families are buried. So it goes back to the 1800s. There are a number of, at least for Lee County, well-recognized last names, Flints and Yeomans, and there are 11 Confederate soldiers buried there, and it's loved by the community. It's not a municipal cemetery, so the people who take care of it are all volunteers. They've taken upon themselves to take care of its upkeep. And because it's near the Orange River, a lot of the burials are in vaults above ground, but until this storm, they've held up pretty well.
And we saw the video on Facebook. A lot of people saw that circulated around. The caskets kind of actually floating around off their foundations and floating. There
was so much water, and it was moving with such force that it did displace these above ground burials and shove them off of the, one of them was shoved right into a chain link fence like it's trying to get out. And of course the wind toppled tree branches, brought down crosses and gravestones, and just really made a mess of this place.
And Ken Fay, you chronicled the images of this and actually spoke with the families who really feel a sense of urgency about restoring everything back to its proper place.
Yes, I spoke with Donna Lang. She happened to arrive just as I was arriving there, and she had an aunt and uncle that were buried there. And as she entered into the cemetery with a friend, you can hear her saying, "I think they were over there in the corner. I think they're over there in the corner." And then when she gets to the corner and they're not there, you can just see this great sense of disappointment come over her. And she's asking me, "Do you know where, you know, the Wootens are?" And together, her and I, me with my camera, and to some degree, kind of looked for the Wootens. And in fact, her uncle was actually the vault that had made its way into the fence. And as I talked to her, you know, there was some sincere emotion and some sincere dread there. Emotion born out of them being moved, but then dread at how are they going to be placed back, you know. So it was kind of, it was eye-opening that even that those that weren't living, you know, were still hurting, I guess, in some ways.
Sure, impacted. And you have to feel for them. I mean, that's not something you expect, to have a loved one that's already been interned in a way, now kind of scattered around, and having to find them actually after the storm.
Yeah, one thing that she pointed out that Amy kind of alluded to as well is She said, I know that this is not the most important thing, that there still are people in shelters, you know, there are still people without power, some without food, some without fresh water, but she was just really hoping, like deeply, with every emotion in her body, that there would be a time where this could be resolved and these caskets and these above ground vaults could be put back in their place.
And it's worth noting that Collier County had a similar occurrence at a graveyard in Immokalee area.
At the Lake Trafford Memorial Gardens too, the same thing happened. As the Naples Daily News reported, the water came up so high that some of the caskets started to emerge from the ground, and there was a very poignant story of a woman seeing her mother's casket unearthed. So this is a problem when you get these unexpected storms and water events, things move.
Very interesting. Now, did they have a plan to kind of restore order for these loved ones?
The same volunteer corps that has kind of taken care of this cemetery is mobilizing. There's a Facebook community, and people have followed this story on Facebook. They're getting together, they're pitching in, they're bringing their equipment, and this coming Saturday, they're all going to go out to the cemetery and begin working. They're not sure, I mean, they're going to need heavy equipment to put some of these pieces back, but they're at least going to get the process started on Saturday.
And you touched on the fact that this is not a public cemetery that we have today. These have to be manicured and cared for privately because they were private cemeteries in a sense.
Exactly. It's one of 20 non-municipal cemeteries that we know about in Southwest Florida. Back when Southwest Florida was a collection of smaller communities, people just buried their dead close to where they lived, and communities would do that, and it was not taken care of or taken charge of by a central government force. So that's the case with this cemetery and the one in Alva and the smaller cemeteries throughout the region.
And lastly, do you plan on covering the kind of return to resting in peace? Both of you? Kim Fay, will you be there?
Yeah, I think so. I work on Saturday, so I think that we will go out there and we'll document that, you know, with I think a video and with the story as well. And one thing I wanted to point out is that the Southwest Florida community has a recent history of rallying behind places like this. The Fort Myers Cemetery that had a small veteran section that had fell into disarray, and the community came out and, you know, rallied behind and kind of got that cemetery picked back up a lot. And a lot of the driver is veterans. You know,
very true.
Amy and I found out that sometimes if you put that veterans word in there, that kind of helps raise that attention just a little bit, and so some may come out and serve the veterans, but they're also serving non-veterans as well. So I think the Southwest Florida community really rallies behind causes like this.
And they do. I mean, if I may put in a plug for a newspaper, it's because we are the catalyst, because people like Kim Fay go out, document what is happening, and we're able to get it in front of the public. And certainly the community comes together, but it's because we let people know what's happening.
Well, the story we were talking about a few minutes ago really got circulated on social media as well. How many shares of the story?
Well, one way to kind of see if your story is resonating with, you know, with the community is like the Facebook shares, the number of times people have come to the site and then they've shared it. And that act of sharing says this is important. So I think it's up to maybe 13 or 1,400 Facebook shares by now. And that's an exorbitant number, especially so long after the initial hurricane. But back to what Amy says and what you do, what Naples does, what a lot of other news organizations do is I think we are trying to evolve past just I got you or this or that, but hey, here's a need, you know, bring the need to the attention of the public, and if you want to help out, great.